Hello, this is Judy, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the February 16th, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. I will do my best to pronounce all names and words correctly, yet please forgive me if I do not. Here we go. Our first article is under GTA, and the title is Ontario Mayors Are Worried About Soaring Cost of Law Enforcement. Doug Ford says they can't touch police budgets. A letter from the province warned municipalities the strong mayor powers do not include the ability to limit police budget increases or veto estimates of individual line items. And this article is written by Kate Allen, who is a climate change reporter, and David Ryder, who is a senior politics reporter. Premier Doug Ford's government gave the mayors of more than 200 Ontario cities expansive new, quote-unquote, strong mayor powers that would allow them to override council and veto decisions in order to push through important city business. Now, the Ford government is warning those mayors their special powers have an exception: police budgets. In a letter sent to mayors and police boards across the province last month, Solicitor General Michael Kerzner, Kerzner, and Municipal Affairs Minister Rob Flack warned that strong mayor powers do not include the ability to limit police budget increases or veto estimates of individual line items. It is not clear what prompted the letter, which was first reported by the Sonora Journal in its coverage of that city's battle over police spending. The Ministry of the Solicitor General did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Its distribution comes at a tense time for policing in Ontario. Last Thursday, a month after the letter was sent, York Regional Police announced that a major criminal corruption probe, nicknamed Project South, had resulted in dozens of charges against 7 Toronto police officers and 1 retiree. 2 more police officers in Toronto and 3 in Peel Region have been suspended in relation to the probe, but not criminally charged, the Star reported. Earlier this week, the province's Inspector General of Policing announced a review of all 45 police forces in Ontario. Wages behind Toronto police increase. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, whose 2026 budget included a $94 million increase for the Toronto police, confirmed she had received the letter but said it didn't factor into her decision making. She has described the police budget bump as the unavoidable result of wage increases promised in a new collective agreement. Chow previously vowed not to use her veto powers, describing them as undemocratic. Sonora Mayor Mike Bradley called the province's letter, in quotes, arrogance and a, quotes, huge intrusion into local government. They're saying that every mayor and council in this province has no right to contain police spending, Bradley said. The battle in Sonora, and that's Sarnia, maybe it's Sarnia, stems from the police force's request for $5 million to build a new headquarters. Bradley, who wants the police to renovate their existing headquarters, used the veto powers he was granted under strong mayor legislation to reject that capital cost request. He says this move was supported by taxpayers in his city, which recently became debt-free. Police budgets are often municipalities' most expensive service, eating up to 30 to 40% of the total budget, he added, calling cities' struggle to manage policing costs a huge issue. The letter is a license for every police board to go wild, Bradley said. In Peel, where police funding submissions go to the regional government, Mississauga Mayor Carolyn Parrish said she interprets strong mayor powers as applying only to city budgets, not to police budgets set by arm's length boards. Ford grants strong mayor powers. The Ford government in 2022 granted so-called strong mayor powers to the leaders of Toronto and Ottawa, arguing they needed wide latitude, including the ability to veto council decisions hire and fire top officials, and set the annual budget in order to expedite the construction of housing and other provincial priorities. The province has since expanded access to those powers to 216 of Toronto's 444 municipalities, the smallest of which has fewer than 400 residents. While the January letter says mayors cannot use these powers to limit police service board budget increases or veto estimates submitted by police service boards, it also writes that municipalities are not required to adopt a police board's budget estimates as submitted. The Ministry of the Solicitor General also didn't respond to requests to clarify those statements. A mixed message on police. Gabriel Edelman, Eidelman, director of the University of Toronto's Urban Policy Lab, said it appears the Ford government accidentally left gaps or blind spots in the 2022 Strong Mayor legislation and subsequent regulations and is now trying to patch the holes. I don't think the intention of Strong Mayor powers was to give mayor more powers over policing. But if you're giving someone strong mayor power over the budget, it should include all city services. In many municipalities, that includes a local police force. Why does that not imply? He said. The directive from the province seems to be a mixed message. Are these strong mayors or are they not? Rising police costs a concern. Other mayors told the Star that the province's letter had not impacted their handling of budget requests. They said, however, their municipalities are grappling with escalating police costs. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens, who described himself as a police friendly, he once wanted to be a cop, said in an interview that the trajectory for police budgets is unsustainable. Dilkens said the letter was not relevant to Windsor because the police board, on which he sits, takes an active role in pushing back on cost increases, reducing the need for big changes later at council. The Windsor Police Service will see a 4% increase this year in an otherwise austere budget that Dilkens described as necessary to hold property taxes down at a time when unemployment is rising in his city as a result of U.S. tariffs. London Mayor Josh Morgan said that the letter didn't change his understanding of the role of council in approving or altering police budgets, but agreed rising police budgets are a major concern for municipalities. Morgan said he and other mayors had raised these concerns with the province and, recently, in a meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney. Funding from other levels of government haven't been adequate to address all the public safety needs, Morgan said, citing increasingly complex investigations involving international criminal organizations. We've been raising our budgets to try to address and support that, but we need continued support in that space. Brent Cohen is part of the Star's City Hall Bureau. And Katie Allen is a Toronto-based reporter covering climate change for the Star, and David Ryder is a Toronto-based senior politics reporter for the Star. Our next article is under federal politics, and the title is Canada's Sales Deal on EU Defence Procurement as Munich Summit Tests Transatlantic Ties. Defense Minister David McGuinty says Ottawa has signed onto the EU's €150 billion program called Security Action for Europe. And this article is written by Dylan Robertson and Anja Karadelagila, and that's Karadeglija, and they're both of the Canadian Press. Ottawa. Canada has officially signed on to the European Defence Procurement Program it announced it would join last summer, as Washington's upending of geopolitics overshadows the world's top security conference. Defense Minister David McGuinty announced Ottawa had signed onto the European Union's €150 billion program called Security Action for Europe, or SAFE, Saturday at the Munich Security Conference. The program allows EU countries to access low-interest loans to buy military gear and weapons, as part of an initiative called Rearm Europe, aimed at weaning the continent off relying on the U.S. As the first non-European country taking part in SAFE, Canada companies can partner with European peers to bid on joint projects and access favorable financing. Canada entering the deal was all but confirmed last June when Prime Minister Mark Carney signed a security and defense partnership with the European Union during a visit to Brussels. Last December, the European Union revealed the fee Canada will pay to join this program is 10 million euros, the equivalent of $16 million, which has observers questioning how much investment the pact will generate. The fee is proportionate to the scales of contracts the EU expects a country will generate for its domestic industry, and the assessed fee for the UK is several times the size of Canada's fee. The agreement strengthens our collective security, supports the development of key defense capabilities, and gives Canadian industry access to European defense markets while contributing to European and Ukrainian security, McGuinty wrote in a Saturday statement to media outlets. Carney was set to oversee this and other deals being signed in Munich, but suddenly canceled his trip following a mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge, BC. The Prime Minister was expected to address the security conference following his headline-grabbing speech last month at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he urged middle powers to work together against American hegemony and other great powers coercing and subjugating smaller countries. Andrea Charan, director of the Center for Defense and Security Studies at the University of Manitoba, called Carney's Davos address a really important inflection point. Before that speech, I perhaps thought that all the Europeans and other actors would try and outdo themselves to fawn over Trump to prevent another round of tariffs, she said. Carney's speech was sort of a call to action, for especially middle powers to stop trying to mollify a bully and for them to forge their own future. U.S. President Donald Trump has put serious strain over transatlantic relations in particular, with repeated threats to annex Greenland, an autonomous territory of fellow founding NATO member Denmark. Trump escalated these threats for weeks before saying he would not use force to take the territory, a move Denmark said wouldn't have ended the NATO alliance. Roland Parks, who leads the University of Ottawa's Graduate School of International Affairs, said the American threat against a fellow NATO member means the Munich conference is taking place under extraordinary circumstances. That was a wake-up call for many people in Europe who may have been hoping that this strange period in American politics could be weathered, Paris said. That's the part of Carney's speech that has, I think, gotten people talking in Europe in particular, taking stock of a fundamentally changed world and what that means for Europe, including for its security. Europe and Canada are both increasing their defense spending after Trump accused both of free riding on American defense expenditure, and he has at times suggested Russia should invade NATO members who don't pay up. On Saturday, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the Munich conference that, quote, Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe, but does not want to abandon the continent. Carney has agreed to spend the equivalent of 5% of GDP on defense by 2035, a huge increase from the 2% Canada was expected to reach in 2025, according to NATO estimates. At Munich, Canada also signed a military-industrial memorandum with Denmark and a joint declaration with Germany on artificial intelligence that touches on technology sovereignty. Ahead of Carney canceling his trip, officials who briefed reporters on the condition they not be named said he had been set to meet with the heads of government of Greenland, Denmark, Ukraine, Germany, Spain, Finland, Norway, and the European Union, as well as a delegation of U.S. senators. He was also set to meet with business leaders while in Munich to try and attract investment in Canada's critical mineral, energy, and technology sectors. The Munich Security Conference is, in quotes, the largest gathering of security and foreign policy types in the world, explained Senator Peter Boehm, Boehm, a former diplomat who serves as ambassador to Germany. He described it as similar to Davos, but focused on security and foreign policy. At last year's event, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance gave a speech where, instead of talking about Ukraine as expected, he attacked European countries and used a part of his speech to focus on the exclusion of a far-right party. In quotes, of course, Germany has restrictions on hate speech because of its World War II legacy. And so this was really astonishing and appalling for the Europeans, explained Stephen Saideman, Saideman, Patterson Chair in International Affairs at Carleton University. Some things have changed since then. After a year of everybody's trying to figure out how to best pander to Trump and make sure they don't upset him, they've now started to price in his anger and are willing to move ahead, even if they are doing things that annoy the United States, Saideman said. Speaking before Carney canceled his trip, Boehm predicted there would be lobbying of Canada over its upcoming submarine purchase. German submarine manufacturer TKMS and South Korean firm Hanwha, Hanwha Oceans, are competing for a lucrative multi-billion-dollar contract to supply Canada with up to 12 new submarines. Canada is also in the market for fighter jets. In 2025, Carney asked for a review of Canada's plan to purchase a fleet of U.S.-made F-35 fighter jets. And this article was written with files from Kyle Dugan and David Baxter. Our next article is under British Columbia, and the title is RCMP Investigation of Shooting at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School Completed. RCMP said an investigation of the crime scene at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School, where 5 students and an educator were killed last week, has concluded. And this is written by Jack Farrell of the Canadian Press. So in Tumbler Ridge, RCMP said an investigation of the crime scene at Tumbler Secondary School, where 5 students and an educator were killed last week, has concluded. Police state in a statement that the school has been turned back over to local school district. Mounties pulled down the yellow tape that had surrounded the school since Tuesday when 18-year-old Jessica Van Rootselaar, Rootselaar, shot and killed 5 students and an educator after killing her mother and half-brother at the family home. Van Rootselaar killed herself as police arrived at the school. However, it's unclear when or if students will ever return to classes at the school after Premier David Eby said students would not be forced to return. Eby's announcement came after Christy Fennell, the superintendent of Peace River South School District, said in a letter to families on Friday that the expectation is that the students will not be returning to the school. This report by the Canadian Press was first published on February 16, 2026. This next article is under Olympics and Paralympics. It's day 10 of the 2026 Winter Olympics. Here's how many medals Canada has won so far. Canada's athletes are hoping to best the country's record for medals won in a Winter Olympics 29, which was set in Beijing in 2018. And this article was written by Joshua Smith, staff reporter, Alexa McKee, staff reporter, Dania Yacob, YAQOOB, staff reporter, Alicia Wang, staff reporter, Gabriel Hilty, HILTY, staff reporter, and Maria Toskunov, TUSTONIC, staff reporter. On the 10th day of the competition, speed skater Courtney Sarault, Sarault, has won Canada's 10th 10th medal of the 2026 Winter Games. Sarraute took home the silver to bring her total to 3 in the Milan Cortina Games. She has claimed world championships and raced for Canada in the 2022 Beijing Olympics, though did not medal. Canada athletes have until February 22nd, when the Games wrap up, to add to their medal total in 116 events across 16 disciplines. Canada is coming off a record-breaking performance in Paris in 2024, when the country's athletes won 27 medals, the highest Canadian total ever in a single non-boycotted Summer Games. The Canadians claimed 26 medals at the last Winter Games in Beijing in 2022, but only 4 of those medals were gold and over half were bronze. The most medals ever won by Canada in the Winter Olympics, excluding boycotted games, came in the 2018 Games in Beijing, South Korea, when Canadian athletes won 29 medals, including 11 gold. Canada's record for most gold medals in the singular Winter Olympics is 14, all achieved on home soil at Vancouver in 2010. Here are Canada's medalists for the 2026 Games so far. Gold, 1, Michael Kingsbury, and he won it in the men dual moguls freestyling skiing. Canada finally won its first gold on day 9 of the 2026 Winter Games, courtesy of Kingsbury. The champion has been a flag bearer for the country at the Olympics opening ceremony. In the Olympic debut of the men's dual mogul freestyling skiing event, the 33-year-old athlete from Deux-Montages, and that's Montagnes, Quebec, beat one of his greatest rivals, Ikumu Hiramoshina, and that's the last name is Horishima of Japan, for the gold. Silver, 4, Courtney Sarraute, who women's 1,000 meter short track speed skating. Sarraute, and that's Sarault, took home the silver to win her 3rd medal and Canada's 10th at the Milan Cortina Olympics. The 25-year-old from Moncton, Moncton, New Brunswick, led part of the race, but was overtaken in the last few laps. She finished behind Sandra Zelzeboer, and that's Veesboer, Velzeboer of the Netherlands, and ahead of Ji Lee Kim of South Korea. Sarraute also won a bronze medal in the 500 meters and a silver in the mixed relay race. She skated for Canada at the 2022 Olympics in Beijing, but didn't win a medal there. Elliot Grondin, Grondin, men's snowboard cross. The 24-year-old from Ste. Marie, Quebec, claimed his 3rd career Olympic medal and the 6th medal for Canada at these games. Grondin sat in 2nd place for much of the final and ultimately finished behind Austria's Alessandro Hammerle, and that's Haemmerle. Jacob Dusk, Dusk, also of Austria, took the bronze. Grondin was a medal favorite as a world champion and top rider on the world tour for the last 2 years. He won the silver medal in this event at the 2022 Olympics in Beijing, as well as a bronze in the team event. Michael Kingsbury, men's freestyle mogul skiing. Kingsbury secured his 3rd silver medal at an Olympics with a formidable performance in the men's mogul skiing finals on February 12th. It was Kingsbury's 4th Olympic medal overall, including a gold from Beijing in 2018. The 33-year-old from Deux-Montages, Quebec, had the top score of 83.71 with 1 period to go, but Austria's Cooper Woods finished with the same mark. Woods won based on the tiebreaker, a higher score based on the judge's technical evaluation of how well an athlete turns through the moguls. Courtney Sarraute, Kim Bolton, Felix Rousseau, and that's Roussel, and William Dandijon, and that's Dandijanou. Mixed team relay short track speed skating. Canada's short track speed skating team won the nation's first silver medal at the 2026 Winter Olympics. In a dramatic final, the mixed relay team, who was in third for much of the race and at one point dropped to fourth, eventually pulled ahead to finish in second. Italy took the gold and Belgium the bronze medal. The Canadian team finished the 2,000-meter relay race with a time of 2 minutes 39.26 seconds, only slightly behind Italy's times of 2 minutes 39.02 seconds. Bronze, 5. Laurent Dubreuil, Dubreuil, men's 500-meter short track speed skating. Dubreuil set an Olympic record of a time of 34.26 seconds in this 500-meter race, but was then surpassed twice. The sport's young superstars, American Jordan Stoltz and Jeannine de Boo of the Netherlands, took the gold and silver medals respectively. Dubreuil believed he could win a medal at these Olympics despite being the oldest man at the field at the event and despite failing to crack the podium on the World Cup circuit this season. The 33-year-old from Lévis, Quebec, finished 0.03 seconds off the podium in the 5,000-meter event at the 2022 Games in Beijing before winning silver in the 1,000. Courtney Charlotte, women's 500-meter short track speed skating. Charlotte snuck past Selma Postma, and that's Poutsma of the Netherlands, in the final stretch of the 500-meter speed skating event to get on the podium. Charlotte, the top-rated woman in short track, won Canada's 4th bronze medal and 7th medal overall in these Olympics. She finished with a time of 42.427 seconds as Xandra Velzeboer, and that's Velzeboer of the Netherlands, 41.609 seconds, won gold, and Italian skater Arianna Fontana took the silver. This was Charlotte's second medal of the Milan Cortina Games, following the silver she nabbed as part of Canada's contingent in the mixed team relay. Philippe Giles and Paul Poirier, and that's Poirier. Figure skating free dance. Canadians ice dance team Piper Gills and Paul Poirier have won their first Olympic medal, a bronze, and Canada's 4th medal of these Winter Games. This is Canada's first ice dance medal since Tessa Virtue and Scott Moore brought home gold at the 2018 Beijing Olympics. The pair have danced together for over 15 years and previously competed at the 2022 Beijing Olympics and the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. Gills and Poirier came into this Olympics with a record-breaking 6th consecutive gold medal at Skate Canada International. Megan Oldham, women's free ski slope style. Oldham brought home Canada's 2nd Olympic medal and 2nd bronze of these games with a best score of 76.46. This is her 2nd Olympics and 1st Olympic medal, having previously came in 4th at Beijing 2022. The 24-year-old Newmarket native is a 4-time world champion and entered these Olympics with a bronze from the 2025 Freestyle Ski and Snowboarding World Championships. She is set to compete in the women's free ski big air event, qualifiers for which begin later this week. Valerie Matthias, women's 3,000-meter long track speed skating. Matthias earned Canada's first medal of these games and the 3rd Olympic medal of her career on day 1 of the games. She finished with a time of 3 minutes 56.93. Wow, that's fast. Behind gold medal winner Francesca Lollobrigida of Italy and silver medalist Ragnhild Wilkund, Wilkund of Norway. The 35-year-old from L'Abbaye, Quebec, entered the Games ranked 4th in the world. She's competing in her 5th Olympics. Matthias is the only Canadian and 3rd international to win Olympic medals in both short track and long track speed skating. In addition to her gold medal in the long track pursuit at Beijing 2022, she claimed silver in the short track 3,000-meter women's relay at Sochi 2014. Joshua Smith is a staff reporter with The Star. You can reach him at his email, joshuasmita @thestar.ca. Alexa McKee is a staff reporter with The Star. She can reach at her email, which is AMACKIE @thestar.ca. Danya Yoka is a staff reporter for The Star. She can be reached at DYAQOOB @TORSTAR.ca. Alicia Chang is a staff reporter with the Toronto Star. She can be reached at ALICIAWANZ @thestar.ca. Gabriel Hilty is a staff reporter with The Star. He can be reached at GHILTY @thestar.ca. Maya Tustonek is a staff reporter with The Star. She can be reached at MTUSTONIC @thestar.ca. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article is under opinion, and it's from Dave Bidini, Bidini. It's a love letter to winter and frozen things. And David Bidini is a contributor. He is the publisher of the West End Phoenix, author of 13 books, and the co-founder of the Rhenostatics, and that's RHEOSTATICS. There are few things blessed by the deep cold. Things that aren't blessed: sidewalks, outdoor plumbing, old boilers, front and back stairs, stray cats and dogs, and new Canadians facing their first winter. Last week, myself and a neighbor helped push and steer our Brazilian neighbor's vehicle from an icy parking spot, and after getting behind the wheel and swearing through the 10 words you can't or didn't used to say on television, I noticed a small person in a pink snowsuit looking bewildered at me from her car seat in the back. After finally extricating the vehicle onto the flat road, I got out and told the neighbor she was good to continue on her way. She thanked us, burst into tears, and drove away with wet mittens, her sweet cargo staring at us through the window. The winter is rough, but thankfully the rinks aren't. 2026 has been a banner campaign for frozen things, and no matter where you skate, Soren, Trinity, Greenwood, Skating, Dovercourt, Nathan Phillips, or one of the 80-plus rinks in the city, the opportunities have been greater than in all the past years, where gluey winter rain and fluctuating temperatures once corrupted the surfaces, leading to bumpy, hazardous ice. Getting out into the cold only to stand on something colder has been a challenging notion while swallowed in blankets in the warmth of your home. But once the effort is made, the payoff is memorable and memorably northern. Skating outdoors is not a Wim Hof exercise. Many of us layer and bundle as if we're about to climb Everest. But it's not Wim Hof, owing to the way the cold feels as if it's sending your organs into flight, or at least before seeking refuge in the rink house around plastic cups of hot chocolate and cheese pizza medallions, 50 cents a wheel. Still, playing winter sports in our communities is a cry of life. It's a notice to each other that, despite darkened porches and backyards filled with snow, we are still here. My personal winter ritual for the past 20 years or so has been the Wolf Island Hockey Tournament, a 20-minute ferry ride from Kingston, at least when the ferry is running. The latest electric boats from Mote have been a trial, failing during the cold seasons, and the older boats are now in the water as a stopgap. We first started playing on natural ice in the basement baseball diamond, and then at one point we moved to the bay behind Brophy's Point on the island's eastern end, skating on a bandy-sized surface between frozen marshes. One year, having moved back to the diamond, the ice didn't freeze properly, so we chanced to play on lake ice near the ferry dock. Our surface lit by the headlights of surrounding F-150s, where New Yorker writer Ben McGrath won the tournament on a shootout goal under the move, inspiring the Sarah Harmer song St. Peter's Bay, which she also played. Locals used to a Zamboni, a figure eight on Lake Ontario, and we would skate into the clouds after games, stoned and tired. We'd sleep in duck clubs with wood stoves and gather at the Sportsman's Grill for breakfast, only to return to the city, not entirely clear if any of it had been real. After a decade or so, the Islanders were able to fundraise and build a rink with permanent ice. Part-time resident Don Cherry signed and sold 500 Ducks Unlimited jackets to help with the cost. And despite farming a handful of players over the years who played junior hockey, including Jim Houghton and Frank Coffey, it was the first true arena on the island, just up the road from the elegantly revived Wolf Island Hotel, which houses visiting players. Last weekend, we walked in our gear up the hill from Marysville and skated under the roof and against the howling island minus 18-degree wind. Our beards and sideburns iced our hands and feet screaming from the frost. Some players changed in trailers, while the rest piled into a cinder block dressing room with a waterless sink under old team photos rescued from the island archive. Because of the crowded spill of bags and bodies, someone took home someone else's jockstrap, but otherwise our escape was clean. Skating against the bitter cold, we played short 20-minute games announced on a microphone wired through a trainer guitar amp, and this year's winner, the Lake Ontario Water Keeper team, raised the Phantom Lake Ontario Cup, a milk jug that was lost to the woods years ago. Bodies thawed post-game, and eventually we found each other in the bar of the hotel, where a house band played songs by Cheap Trick and Journey. In the morning we awoke with such foreheads on weary legs and bruised haunches, only one player's car wouldn't start before eventually coughing to life, staring through the hotel windows at the expanse of fresh snow. Having made it, we told ourselves, to the other side of winter. This next article is in sports, and the title is, Listen, the Blue Jays open spring training in sunny Florida, but under a cloud of injuries, plus the mailbag. And spring training is underway in Dunedin, Florida. And this is written by guest Toronto Star baseball columnist Gregor Chisholm. Spring training has opened, and the Blue Jays are reporting to camp in Dunedin, Florida, under a cloud of injuries. Starter Shane Bieber won't be able to start the season on time. Slugger Anthony Santander is out at least 5 or 6 months, and pitcher Bowen Francis will miss the entire season and likely most of next season as well. We'll hear from General Manager Ross Atkins and Manager John Schneider about what happened and how the Jays plan to pivot, and then discuss what they had to say and what the team can do with Gregor Chisholm, who is down in Dunedin covering the opening of Jays camp for the Star. Also, we open the mailbag at deep left field at thestar.ca. And Mike Wilner is a Toronto-based baseball columnist for the Star. Our next article is under business, and the title is Janice Charette to be Canada's top trade negotiator during CUSMA review. And this article is written by Kyle Dugan of the Canadian Press. In Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney has chosen Janice Charette, the former head of the Public Service, to serve as the country's chief trade negotiator to the United States. Charette is a career bureaucrat who served twice as the clerk of the Privy Council and once as High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. Her appointment comes just ahead of a major review of the North American Free Trade Pact, known as the Canada-US-Mexico Agreement. It also comes a day after Mark Wiseman, a global investment banker and pension fund manager, took the reins as Canada's next ambassador to Washington. Canada's last ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman, recently stepped down so a fresh team could be assembled to take on the review of the trade pact. U.S. President Donald Trump has slammed Canada with tariffs in key sectors over the past year and is expected to adopt a hardball approach during the oncoming CUSMA review. And this report by the Canadian Press was first published on February 16, 2020. This next article is an editorial and it's an opinion, and the title is "It's a Pivotal Moment for One of Canada's Crucial Industries. Mark Carney is meeting it." And there's a picture of a steam buggy, and the caption reads that in 1867, Henry C. Taylor designed and built his steam buggy in Stansted, Quebec. It was the first car to be designed and constructed in Canada. Here, Eric Fleming attaches the stovepipe chimney to the steam buggy for an exhibit at the Canadian International Auto Show in 2015. And that is a file photo of the Toronto Star taken by David Cooper. And this article was written by the Star editorial board, and the Star editorial board is responsible for the editorial and op-ed pages, as well as content on the opinion section of thestar.com. That includes editorials, letters to the editor, columns, opinion articles by guest commentators, and multimedia features on the Star.com opinion section. Henry Seth Taylor, ring a bell? Likely not. Yet Prime Minister Mark Carney turned to this largely forgotten figure of Canadian history to help frame the Liberal government's new multi-billion-dollar, multi-headed automobile strategy to remind us that the auto industry has been and will remain central to Canada's story. It's true that Taylor, resident of Stansted, Quebec, built a steam-powered buggy fueled by a coal boiler. And yes, as Carney noted, this was in 1867, that most Canadian year. But what Carney didn't mention is that 3 years earlier, an American steam-powered buggy that had been shown at the Stansted Town Fair, causing the Stansted Journal to gape at, in quotes, the wondrous novelty of an ordinary road carriage driven over the common highway without the aid of horses or other draught animals. Taylor's subsequent attempt to duplicate this feat did result in a first. Heading down a steep hill with his brakeless buggy, Heading down a steep hill, his brakeless buggy crashed, thus, for the history books, resulting in the first automobile accident in Canadian history. And yet, the story still works. Canada and the U.S. have been entwined on auto for as long as auto has existed. More than 500,000 Canadians bring home a paycheck because we make cars in this country. Yet more than 90% of Canadian-made vehicles are shipped south of the border. That's why Carney is right that, with U.S. President Donald Trump sending the industry careening into an uncertain future, the time is now for Canada to set out a clear and distinct path. Carney announced last week a plan to transform Canadian auto manufacturing, driving it away from its reliance on a single trading partner through a series of complex initiatives. The strategy is to adapt, innovate, and in the Liberals' thinking, become a global leader in electric vehicle production and autonomous technologies. That's a crucial global message at a time when the U.S. government is taking the opposite tact. Last September, the Trump administration did away with almost all tax credits for new and used EVs. The country's EV infrastructure program has been curtailed, and the goal of 50% EV adoption by 2030 is dead in the water. One example, in October, General Motors, citing the changing regulatory environment and the limitation of tax credits in the U.S., confirmed the end of production of its electric delivery van in Ingersoll, Ontario. Defining the U.S. auto strategy is uncomplicated. It is fuel-based. It is encouraging to see that Carney is continuing to push in the opposite direction, though in the market-based style his government prefers. Under Carney's plan, the Trudeau government's controversial electric vehicle availability standard, which set zero emission sales targets for auto manufacturers, is no longer. Instead, manufacturers will have more flexibility in how they meet stronger greenhouse gas emission standards, which the government hopes will result in the country achieving 75% EV sales by 2035. That's fast, and 90% by 2040. The new plan will see the launch of a 5-year affordability program with incentives up to $5,000 this year on the purchase or lease of EVs made in countries Canada has a trade deal with, and $2,500 on hybrids. It also seeks to address the lack of EV refueling infrastructure, a persistent impediment to uptake. The government intends to induce the private sector to swiftly build out a national network through a $1.5 billion pot dedicated via the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. The biggest ticket, spurring investment in Canadian auto manufacturing. The Carney government will use the revamped Strategic Response Fund to allocate up to $3 billion in investment to help the industry adapt, grow, and diversify to new markets. What that will really mean in the world of auto manufacture will take months, if not years, to come clear. Any auto worker can cite chapter and verse the billions that go into retooling a single plant. But just as easily, any Canadian auto worker can attest to being held hostage to the winds of U.S. commerce, the shutting of a shift of GM's Oshawa plant being just the latest example. So Carney's right. This is a pivotal moment for the auto industry and the Canadian economy. The tariffs have upended the bargain that has existed for as long as I've lived, he said last week. This upending brings pain and risk, but also may push us to pursue opportunities that in simpler times were all too easy to ignore. At this government's best, it has shown a canniness in wedding principle and pragmatism. Carney's plan looks to be an example of just that, an attempt to reorient Canadian auto manufacturing towards a greener, more prosperous, less dependent future, but at a pace our embattled industry can withstand. And there's a correction to this. The photo caption was updated from a previous version to note that Henry Seth Taylor designed and built his steam buggy in Stansted, Quebec in 1867, not 1987. This next article is under food and drink, and it says this $8.50 jumbo empanada is a Kensington Market classic and the best thing I ate in Toronto this week. Our food reporter explores the city in search of most delicious and affordable dishes Toronto and the GTA has to offer. And this was written by Karon, and that's Karon Liu, Liu, who is a food reporter. Jumbo empanada, chicken's empanada, $8.50, 245 Augusta Avenue. The dish. The oversized empanada still lives up to its name decades since I first had it. Bigger than my hand and almost enough to cover the whole plate, a single empanada is enough for an under $10 light lunch. Inside the golden brown, slightly bubbly, and charred crust is juicy pulled chicken mixed with chopped hard-boiled eggs, slightly caramelized onions, spinach, pitted black olives, and red peppers. It's savory, but has an underlying sweet note thanks to cooked onions and peppers. It's fitting for the spice averse, but I think it tastes better with a punch of acidic heat, so ask for a side of Prebre, P-E-B-R-E, a spicy Chilean salsa of chopped onions, tomatoes, cilantro, and chilies to spoon into the empanada. The restaurant. While Kensington Market is overflowing with restaurants and takeout options nowadays, in the 19s, the neighborhood was still mostly known as a place for local residents and chefs in the know to get groceries, in particular Latin foodstuffs. Jumbo Empanada's founder, Irene Morales, Morales, started selling her empanadas made from her mother's recipe out of her home in 1988 before getting a food cart in Kensington Market in the early 90s. Demand grew enough that the sit-down restaurant opened in 1999. While it's less flashy than other restaurants in the neighborhood, to this day it's still one of the few places to get Chilean food in the city. The dining room is a bit of a time warp with exposed brick and faded newspaper clippings, but for those who miss a pre-Instagram backdrop Kensington Market, Jumbo Empanada's quiet and laid-back dining room is a welcoming respite. What else is on the menu? The other meat option is the beef empanada, $8.50, in which ground beef is mixed with chopped hard-boiled eggs, onions, whole pitted black olives, as well as raisins for subtle fruitiness that mellows everything out. The restaurant also makes humitas, Humitas, for $8.50, an ancient dish made from mashed corn, onion, and basil that's wrapped in a corn husk, then steamed. Upon unwrapping the little bundle, fragrant sinews of sweet steam wafted out, revealing a golden yellow mash that's unbelievably creamy and appropriate for the vegan and gluten-free crowd. For larger appetites, pastel de chocolo, CHOCOLO, $13.25, or corn pie is a Chilean cousin of shepherd's pie. Shredded chicken and ground beef mixed with onions, olives, chopped eggs, and raisins, and then topped with a layer of smashed sweet corn and baked. Explore the area. Focusing on Augusta Avenue, the adjacent Perola's Supermarket, and that's Perola Supermarket, 2247 Augusta Ave, is always a must-visit for home cooks. Don't miss the bins of bulk dried chilies at the entrance. I use a combo of the shop's arbol, chipotle, and gualajo chilies whenever I'm making a big batch of chili. It's also well stocked with imported and locally made tortillas. For the latter, I once picked up a stack of still warm tortillas made by another neighboring business, the long-standing El Trompo, and that's Trompo, which is at 277 Augusta Ave. For those that still miss the since closed Blue Banana for miscellaneous gifts, head to Good Egg, which is at 156 Augusta Avenue, for a more curated and frankly better quality selection of cookbooks as well as adorable home goods and kitchenware. Karen Liu is a Toronto-based food reporter for The Star. You can reach him via email, and it's KARONLIU @thestar.ca. Our last article today is under Reader's Letters, and it's an opinion. Rotten eggs, bad apples, and the Toronto Police Service. Toronto Police corruption case. Explosive allegations against officers accused of leaking information to criminals on February 5th. And the article starts, police officers in Toronto are often suspended with pay, and it will take years for these cases to go to trial. These cops' salaries should be paid for now from union funds. Then, if the officers' names are cleared, the government can repay the union. Why should taxpayers always be left holding the bag? Michael Yaffe, YAFFE, Toronto. Answer, let's remember there are thousands of sincere and honorable police officers who serve and protect us. Out of necessity, their training makes them adept at flying under the radar and covers the sort of dirty tricks that criminals sometimes use to avoid being caught. Even if a few unscrupulous officers decide to misuse their training for corrupt purposes, we should bear in mind that every truckload of eggs contains a few rotten ones. Instead of blaming Chief Myron Demkiw, DEMKIW, and the TPS top brass for these officers' actions, perhaps we should focus on the wonderful job they did in investigating and ultimately apprehending the alleged culprits. There are many places in the world where newspaper reports of police corruption, even on this scale, would barely elicit a shrug from readers. and that's Venkat, Venkat, Krishnan, Krishnan of Ajax, Ontario. I'm concerned that senior members of the Toronto and York Police Services thought it was appropriate to wear armor vests to a media briefing. Were they worried a reporter might shoot them? The body armor is just another indication that police have become increasingly militarized. It seems as if many cops believe themselves to be society's last line of defense against anarchy, such that any action they take, legal or not, is appropriate. But cops aren't above the law, and the rot in our police services won't be eradicated unless we rethink policing policy in Toronto and throughout Ontario. And that part was written by John Walter of Ontario. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 16th, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Judy, that's me, and it has been a pleasure reading to you, and I thank you for this honor, and I hope you have an amazing day and take great care of yourselves.